see the number of people expatriating is increasing. If you're not aware of what the tax filing implications are with that, you're going to have a problem.
That's very trouble.
Yes, yes.
Moving abroad can be one of the best decisions that you will ever make. The freedom, the lifestyle, the opportunities, it's all really exciting. But if you are an American, there's a catch. Even after you leave, the US still taxes you just for being a citizen. It doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter how long you've been gone, you are still on the hook for taxes. But now a new bill called the Residence-Based Taxation Act could change that. And if it passes, it could rewrite the rules for Americans living overseas. So what does this bill mean, and does it actually have a chance at passing? I'm breaking it all down today with Virginia La Torre Jeker, a US international tax expert who spent over 40 years helping Americans navigate this exact system. I'm Jotna, let's go. So really quick update before we get started. I filmed this video a few months back when the residence-based taxation was still being talked about as part of a bigger tax reform bill. However, since then, it unfortunately did not make it into final law. So nothing has changed there. Americans are still taxed on all of their worldwide income. That said, this conversation is still super relevant because these kinds of proposals do come back, and still lawmakers are actively trying to find a way to fix this burden on American citizens abroad. So with that said, let's continue. Could you break down how citizenship-based taxation, why it ends up being such a huge problem?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, it is a huge problem. All right. When someone is moving abroad, they may simply think they don't have to worry about their U.S. tax situation anymore. Nothing could be further from the truth, as you know. That American citizen is taxed on his worldwide income. So no matter what he earns, where he earns it, the U.S. government says you are to be taxed on that. Now, that means you need to file a tax return. If you have any foreign, meaning non-U.S., based investments, which often happens when people move abroad, they may say, oh, wow, this is a great mutual fund. I want to invest in this. Or this is a great startup. I want to invest in this foreign company. And they don't realize that non-U.S. investments entail, first of all, very complicated tax rules. They could be something called PFIC investments, PFIC, PFIC investments. They can be controlled foreign corporation investments, which have a whole host of very complicated tax rules and tax filings.
Right.
So people may say, well, I won the lottery in France. That's great. I don't have to do anything. No, it's taxable. Yes. So they may be able to get foreign tax credits. The complexity really multiplies once you're overseas. If you, God forbid, marry a foreign person who's not a U.S. citizen, then you even have more complexity in the mix because, they may own assets that are non-U.S. You could possibly be living in a community property jurisdiction, such as one of the countries in Latin America. China has community property. Switzerland has community property. Many European nations have community property. And if you're not aware of what the tax filing implications are with that, you're going to have a problem.
That's very trouble.
Yes, yes. So you have an extreme amount of burdensome filings that come into play when someone is living and working abroad and has anything more than a very basic vanilla situation, like they earn their salary and they have a foreign bank account to take the salary and make their payments for, expenses. Once that's simple, basically. You still need to file a tax return, but that's a very simple kind of situation. But once people start getting into more complicated scenarios, the tax complexities multiply. And I'll add here that many non-U.S. financial institutions don't want to deal with American clients.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't want them because that foreign bank, foreign brokerage firm, has to report to the U.S. government about that U.S. individual's account. And they just don't want to deal with it. It's very expensive, it's onerous. If they make mistakes, what issues might they have with the IRS? So Americans are not only dealing with complexities in their own tax situation, but they're dealing with the difficulties that foreign financial institutions, many of them don't want them as customers.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. If you need a foreign mortgage because you're buying a home in a foreign country and you can't get that mortgage, you have issues.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
It's just making me stressed just talking about it. So in the 40 plus years that you have been involved in the US tax world, what does it actually feel to live under this pressure while trying to build a life abroad?
Well, we see the number of people expatriating is increasing. We see the number of people trying to get second citizenships or, visas abroad increasing. So I think that pressure is mounting. It's not a simple scenario when someone moves overseas and says, I'm going to start a business here, and I need a non-US corporation. I need a corporation in my country of residence to run that business for me. That sounds very simple, doesn't it? It doesn't involve tax evasion. I mean, they need an entity for limited liability purposes. So they set up, let's say, a company in, Spain or the UAE or somewhere in Europe, wherever they're living, to run that business. The complexities that alone brings, I will just name one form that they will most likely be needing to fill out. It's called Form 5471. That form, if you need to fill out, it's got 12 different schedules. If you fall into a category of filing that needs those 12 different schedules, you are looking at about 150 estimated hours of time for the return preparer to prepare that form. That's one person with one company. Imagine people having various companies because they've expanded their business to different countries. It gets completely crazy. Yeah. And the stress of not getting it right and the penalties if you don't get it right can be quite scary. So people live under that emotional strain of, I'm not sure if I filed everything. And many times they find out, they're missing something.
Right.
Okay, maybe they didn't use an advisor that was involved with this kind of activity to this degree where they didn't get everything filed that should have been done. A lot of times people will say, look, I pay my advisor $400 to do my tax return. And when I hear that kind of number, I get the hairs sticking up on the back of my neck because I know they probably haven't gotten the right things filed.
So there's this new proposed bill that came out recently, and it aims to shift us to a residence-based taxation system. So could you walk us through how that's different from what we've got now and maybe explain how it could actually ease some of the stress for Americans living overseas?
Right, okay. Well, Representative Darren LaHood has proposed this new bill for residence-based taxation on an elective basis. So a U.S. person can elect to say, I want to be taxed under this system, residence-based, and not under the citizenship-based tax system. So we discussed before that the citizenship-based tax system says, look, anything you earn, no matter where you earn it, is taxed, and you need to report to the IRS on various forms about whatever this income is. Once you shift by an election, making an election, if this bill passes, to be taxed under a residency-based taxation system, what that means is you are saying, I want to be treated like a non-resident alien individual. I want to be treated like that foreign person, okay? And they are only taxed on their U.S. source income. They're not taxed on what they earn abroad.
Right.
And they don't have all these filings to worry about because they have set up this foreign corporation to run their business in the foreign country. So this election allows you to have a much simpler tax system in place, okay? In order to enter that, you do need to make a special election, as I said, and if you are a very wealthy person, what we're trying to do is make sure in this proposal that the wealthy people don't say, oh great, let's jump on this ship because it's a good one for us. If you are very wealthy and you have a net worth of over a certain amount, it's currently $13.6 million. That's you might know, the lifetime exclusion amount. If you pass away, you can die owning $13.6 million and you will not have an estate tax assessed. So they're using that number. They're saying, if that is your net worth, if you're over that, then you will be paying an exit tax, kind of, to enter into this residency-based system. So under that hypothetical tax, what happens is they say, we're going to treat you as if you've sold all of the assets you own in the world, and you will have a pretend gain from that pretend sale, and then you will pay tax on that pretend gain. So it's an exit tax. It's a tax for leaving the citizenship-based system and moving into the residency-based system. If you don't have this high net worth, you still need to prove to the IRS that you've been fully tax compliant for the 5 years prior to moving over into that system. So there are a few, hoops to go through in order to take advantage of the residency-based system. But I think they're very reasonable and can certainly offer a lifeline to many Americans abroad who just say, this is becoming overwhelming for me. I don't know how to manage it. Even, the tax professionals struggle. So I think that it can be a very good thing. Let's see where it goes. And it's in line with President Trump saying he didn't think citizenship-based taxation was, fair. So let's see, it might be rolled into a big tax reform proposal that comes out later this year. And this has taken years. I mean, American citizens abroad, different groups, Democrats abroad, they have been touting this for so many years now, saying, look at what the American overseas is faced with.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And I think, the voices are finally being heard, and that's a great thing.
So for those Americans abroad watching this right now, kind of feeling anxious and confused, what would you say to them? Like, what should they really be focusing on at this point and kind of taking action on?
Right. I think the most important thing for them is to become somewhat educated about what their tax obligations might be. The IRS has a very detailed website now dealing with overseas Americans and what their tax obligations are. It might be a little bit overwhelming, the IRS website. I would suggest people check out my website. It's www.us-tax.org. I've been writing for a very long time, and I've been gearing my pieces for the American abroad, for foreign families with American in the mix, many different kinds of issues. I think people should look at the U.S. tax primer, at least to get the basic ideas what they need to be thinking about. And once they have a little bit of an education, they will feel less overwhelmed.
Right.
And they can use
scary.
that information to find the right tax advisor. Okay, now, some people will have a fairly simple situation. Maybe they just have an overseas job. They have a bank account at a non-US bank to take their salary, to make their expenses. And those people will have a fairly simple situation where they can probably easily use an online tax return preparer. People who start getting into complexity, like they've set up a corporation in the foreign country to deal with their business, those guys are going to need more expertise. So what they might consider doing is finding an international tax professional who has experience. They will pay more for that, but at least have a consultation with that person. Tell them your situation and say, what should I be looking out for? That professional should be able to go through various points with them, like these are the filings you will be needing to make. They will tell them form numbers. They can explain controlled foreign corporations if that's, an issue. So the experienced person will be able to dig deeper. And once the individual gets, let's say, a consultation with that person and understands what their obligations are, it will give them enough information to go and look for the right tax return preparer. Okay, so I think that having some basic information that they know is correct can be super helpful as they go forward and try and deal with their annual tax filings.